We're here to look at fantasy basketball trades, buy lows, sell highs, but really just players who are trending up, trending down. What do we do with them? Michael Bolton. Michael?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I taught Catwoman how to play basketball. And I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. You know the drill. Buy lows and sell highs. Am I going to tell you trade this player for this player? No, I'm not, because I don't think that that is helpful and I don't think that that is instructive. Every league is different. Every situation is different. What I'm going to do is tell you how I think guys are trending, if there's chance of their production improving, chance of it decreasing. The 5 buy low names that I give are not the only players who are buy low. The 5 sell high players, absolutely 100%, are not the only 5 sell high players. That's how it goes. I understand that trades are hard to pull off in leagues, especially sell high ones. They're almost impossible to do. This is, again, just more of an idea that if something comes across your desk, your virtual fantasy desk involving one of these guys, just consider some of this stuff. Try and do trades if you can, but if you're not getting clear wins, don't do it. You don't have to trade. You don't have to. It's not a requirement of what you do. If something is a clear win that you think is a clear win for you, you knock it out. If it's not, you let it slide through to the keeper. That's generally the way that I like to play this. What we're also going to do is recap how we did on the Buy Low, Sell High show 2 weeks ago. We like to give these things 2 weeks to settle. That's why I look at numbers here from the last 2 weeks, and then we look every 2 weeks on to see how players go. So that's what we're going to do in this show, and we'll get into it, and we'll start by recapping the Buy Low, Sell High show from 2 weeks ago, the week 4 Buy Low, Sell High show. How did we go? Last time we were a perfect 10 of 10 in knocking these out. Let's see how we went here. I know how we went. It's not quite 10 of 10, but it's not far off. Tyus Jones was on the Buy Low show. He was 234th, and we knew that he was struggling, and there was a chance of him turning it around. He has 137th. He has been since then. This is our -1 category rankings. That's still not great, right? I do still think we want to hold Tyus in 12-team leagues. This Buy Low stuff more pushes into deeper formats for Tyus as well. Like he's not a 10-team guy, I don't think. 12 he is, but it's a definite improvement, and he has stepped up. Zion Williamson was a pretty obvious one for the biggest bird. He was 120th in -1 rankings. Since then, he is 34th. We talked about what was happening with him, and it was why was his field goal percentage so low, right? Why he wasn't getting to the rim, and that number was low, and that has improved. He has rounded, giggity, that's not even giggity, that's like I don't know, it's a boom tish or something. He's rounded into shape. He looks better. He looks more productive. His field goal percentage has risen, but he's also adding more things. The steals have improved slightly. The assists have improved slightly. So he's gone from 120th in -1 to 34th. And I would say that 34th is not even his final form. I think that over time, if it comes together, it might not. That he could be a top 20 -1 player. Not necessarily this season, not necessarily any time coming up. But he could. He just needs to start to bring more regularity on defensive stats. I don't know that comes. But the field goal percentage can still rise even further from where it is. Jordan Poole, yeah, that's disgusting. He was 133rd. So that's a buy low. So I guess it technically is a win, but I'm not going to count that as a win. 133rd up to 115th. He still looks bad. He's had a couple of good games. Like 3 of his last 4 games have been pretty good. The game yesterday was terrible. And I just don't know what to do with this guy anymore. Minutes are all over the shop. Percentages are dreadful. I still think all that can come up. Usage can come up. Assists, free throw rate, free throw percentage, usage, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. It'll all come up, but I don't know when. I'm not dropping him, but yeah, he did improve marginally. Brandon Ingram was 136th 2 weeks ago. He's 59th now. I think 59th is about the right area for Ingram. So that was a relatively easy one to see him jump up. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. This one didn't work out. he is still buy low. I'm not going to cover him in the buy low section today. He was 91st, and it's gotten worse. He's dropped down to 131st since then. So, yeah, it's not looking good for Jaren. I don't think there's any hope of him maintaining any numbers in the second round if you picked him there. Again, don't think you should have. But if you did take him there, I don't think you got any hope of that. Top 40, probably a possibility still. So he is still on that buy low zone. We only had 4 sell highs 2 weeks ago because I didn't want to try and shoehorn someone in that I didn't really like in that spot. And the first guy we looked at as a sell high was unbelievably Draymond Green. And since we did that show, he's played 1.7 minutes. So, yeah, he played, got ejected, hasn't played since. He was 47th, and, yeah, I don't care where he is. He's like 400th or something since then. That counts, but it also doesn't count because he hasn't played. If you did manage to pull off Giggity a sell high during that time, between when that show aired, when he got ejected and suspended, congratulations, it's a huge W. But I still think that he was going to drop off from that number 47 spot. Fan of Pants, Kevin Huerter was 81st. We went on and on about this, talking about he's not going to stick. He went from 81st to 125th. 125th is still fine. I don't mind him on a roster. I don't think he needs to be rostered, but if you've got him there, by all means. But he's going to be more to me like a Gary Trent, Malik Beasley sort of a player that when it's rolling, he gets some points and threes, and then it doesn't roll, and it's sort of on and off your roster. I think that's how we view Huerter. Bam Adebayo was 5th. There were some very clear indicators that he won't stick, and you might think that dropping from 5th to 18th is, well, that's actually not a big change, Josh. I don't know if that sell high worked. It's a huge difference. Between 5th and 18th is actually a gigantic difference in terms of the overall value of a player. And Bam in the 18 to 26 zone is about where he should be. He was never going to be in that top 5, top 10 range, I didn't believe, and he fell back. That was about what we expected. And the other one was Rowan Barrett. And I actually got pushback on this one when I said there's no way that Barrett is going to do this. He is not this guy. And I got pushback multiple times. Cool. He was 60th, and since then he has reverted back to his RJ Barrettness, and he is 206th. This is what RJ Barrett has been in category leagues forever. Bad. I don't know that you should drop him because some of his scoring is useful, but his minutes are low. His percentages are falling in the toilet. Still no rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. This was one of the most obvious ones of all time because all of his counting stats were basically the same. He was just hitting 55% from 3 or whatever it was. And it fell away, and look at his numbers drop. One of the most obvious sell highs ever. And if you cashed it in for any top 100 player, you would have been feeling pretty good about that, I would imagine. So that's that. That is the recap. Today's episode is brought to you by our partners, the legends, over at eBay Motors. They've teamed up with me to bring you the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether that is a daily draft situation, the waiver wire, every week, whatever it is, we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh, me, has picked out for us on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Let's see, who am I going to pick out of my own list here? I won't do someone who's in this show. I'm going to talk about Jaden Ivey. Ivey has moved into the Pistons starting lineup and has put up some pretty strong numbers. Now, I don't know what mistake Monty Williams is going to make next. He could bench him to bring Bojan Bogdanovic back into the starting lineup, but at this point, I don't really care. I am grabbing Ivey and I'm seeing where this goes. He has been much better this season on a permanent basis, despite the nonsense from Williams to begin the season. His shooting numbers are up, and he is providing good value, and this Pistons team is going absolutely nowhere. So they need to see how him and Cade can work together, and he has been better. So Jaden Ivey is a really strong pickup at the moment. So I don't know if this helps you win your fantasy championship. Hopefully it goes some way towards that. But eBay Motors, they know what a championship team is. It is about each player being a perfect fit, and that's the same with your vehicle. With 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, or whatever it is that your baby needs. eBay Motors has it, and with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride for the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber and not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to US customers, eligible items only, and exclusions apply. Let's go into the buy low section now. I'm going to put Scooter on here. Sterling Henderson. Played only 22 minutes a night since he returned from his ankle injury coming off the bench. That's your number one thing, right? People don't... Part of this, again, is you, me, whoever it is that's doing this, we can often get caught up in the surface level stuff. You're in a fantasy points league. This happens all the time. Someone asked me this today. Hey, you changed someone's projection from 35 fantasy points to 33. What happened? Why'd you do that? And I don't. And the players' projections or results don't come that way. It comes from a multitude of different back-end factors. And that's the same with Scoot. You might go, well, look, he's killing me. Look at his ranking. Look at his fantasy points. He's played 22 minutes a night. And I will guarantee you that he will not play 22 minutes a night every game moving forward here for the Blazers. That just isn't going to happen. Scoot's 308th in -1 rankings, 412th in Yahoo rankings over the last 2 weeks, averaging 16 fantasy points, and that's 223rd. He's averaging under 10 points with 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 0.3 steals, no blocks, shooting 37 from the field, 50 from 3 somehow, which would indicate to you that his 2-point percentage is disgusting, and 50 from the line. So the number one thing we look at is minutes. Like, he's just not going to stick at 22 minutes. I do believe it's going to be rocky for Scoot, but I think we're going to give it 3 to 4 weeks for it to round into something good, and I think it will come. If you can't deal with that, that's fine. If you're in any sort of deeper league or someone's got Scoot and they're debating what they do, this is more just to say that Scoot's going to jump up. But if you're in a league where someone is frustrated and they've got him and they've held him and he came back and he's doing this, and they go, well, they're going to keep him off the bench. Well, he's a bust, whatever. There's value in being able to acquire Scoot here. He's also only shot 50% from the line. For the G League, he shot 75 last season, and in his first season in the G League, he shot 77. This is not to say that he's a good free throw shooter, but 50 versus 75 is very different. So there's going to be a big improvement there. There's going to be an improvement in minutes. It's going to be improvement in assist numbers. There's going to be improvement in all of this stuff. So if someone is wavering on Scoot, if they drop Scoot, if you're in a deeper league, I would get him. I think it is going to be rough for a couple of weeks, but there is, I believe, tremendous value in acquiring Scoot Henderson at this point. Let's go to Charlotte. We don't know what's going to happen with LaMelo Ball at the time of me recording this. I know that he's out for this game. Shocker that he wasn't doubtful. He was actually out, and I think he's going to miss a week or two minimum, would be my guess. I don't think it's a month-long thing, but I don't know. Gordon Haywood has been in a situation where it's that absolute sweet spot for fantasy misevaluation. A player returns, Miles Bridges, and the player that he ostensibly competes with or takes over from starts shooting horribly. And that's exactly what happened to Haywood. Haywood is 220th in -1 ranks over the last 2 weeks. He's 294th in Yahoo. He's averaging just 20.4 fantasy points, which is 173rd. All that looks dreadful, and you would say that's clearly droppable. Bridges has come back and killed him. Cool. He's averaging 8 points, 5 rebounds, and 3.2 assists with 0.6 steals and 0.4 blocks. He is still averaging 33 minutes a night. Do you think that Miles Bridges has made him average half a steal? Do you think that Miles Bridges has made him average 8 points? Do you think that Miles Bridges has made him average or shoot 28 from the field, 25 from three-point line? Like 100% he hasn't. Very clearly he hasn't. Bridges will have some impact on Haywood, but not in those areas. That's not what any of this does. So it's very clear to me that he is a clear buy low, plus the absence of LaMelo Ball means that more ball handling has to move on to Haywood. He's averaging just 3.2 assists over the last 2 weeks. That's a really low number. For the season, he's at 4.5. For last season, he was at 4.1. I think we could have a little run here of 5.5 assists for Haywood with LaMelo out, because Bridges is not that guy, Washington's not that guy, Brandon Miller's not that guy. It's only Rozier, and Haywood is going to handle the ball. So that number's going to spike. And he's got 36 true shooting. Literally nothing to do with Miles Bridges. He's only been at 49 for the season, still really low, but 56 last season. So we have got an immense level for Haywood to improve. And we know that you improve your percentages, in particular threes, but if you improve free throws and field goals, your scoring goes up. So that 8 points can easily become 15. Your threes made can go from, at 0.6 per game, up to 1.2, 1.3. Very easily. Bump the assists in there. Like at the moment, you don't have to give up anything to get Gordon Haywood in a trade. Throw your worst player and throw your worst 2 players. Do it now, though, because I think things are going to change. But if he's on the wire, at him. Just throw your worst player. He's washed. He's injury prone. Look at these numbers. That's what people will be thinking. You don't have to give up much for Haywood. And I don't even know that this is going to be a long-term thing for Gordo. It might not be. But what I do know is that people will tie in the Bridges return to Haywood's production, and it is 100% not related. These numbers are not related to Miles Bridges. So go and get him at a bit of a cheaper price than you're going to be able to get him at a later date. Let's go to Boston and look at Drew Holiday, who is also having some struggles. 138th in -1 rankings over the last 2 weeks. 198th when you look at Yahoo. 27.7 fantasy points, which puts him 105th. He's averaging 11 points, 7.6 rebounds, very big rebound number, 3.6 assists, 0.6 steals, and a block, shooting 36, 29, and 67. Your number one thing anytime a player is struggling or overperforming should always be, what are they shooting? What is their 3-point percentage? Go to that first. That is your number one thing to look at. Secondly, go to 2-point percentage or field goal percentage. They are the things you look at. And then look if there's any other differences in other categories. But if you go to percentages first, this will give you the best indication. And that's where we're at with Jrue Holiday. He is shooting 36 from the field and 29 from three. They are horrible numbers, very, very clearly. I think Jrue is not going to be a top 50 player this season. I don't believe he's going to be that. But I also don't think that these numbers that he's putting up are anywhere close to what his numbers are going to be. He's still playing 36 minutes a night. He's currently dealing with an ankle injury. Another great opportunity to get in on buy low. If you can get Jrue Holiday for like a top 90 player, you do it. Again, I don't think he's top 50. I don't think he's top 40. Top 60, maybe. That's sort of the range. But you don't trade a top 60 player to get him. Top 100, top 90. You get the guy who's worried about Jrue, who worries about the injuries, who's already got multiple injuries, and you try and get Jrue that way. He's shooting 29% from three over the last 2 weeks. He's only at 33.8 for the season, but he was a 38% shooter last season, 41 the year before that, 39 the year before that. Now, it is possible. It is possible. I'm sorry to do this, Jrue. I'm not, because I just want to hear the sound, but it is possible. It is possible when someone is 33 that they do become washed. And washed has you can use it however you want. That the decline comes and it never comes back to the level. And shooting is one of those things. Maybe he is now a 35% shooter instead of 38. That is distinctly possible. He's not washed, let's get that clear. But it is distinctly possible at this age that the shooting doesn't come fully back. But he's not going to stick, I don't believe, at 29% from three. I also don't think that he's going to hold at 3.6 assists. This is a team who doesn't have an abundance of playmakers. Tatum's okay. Brown can't do it. Porzingis can't do it. Derek White's fine. But Holiday's a guy that was generating big assists on a team with Giannis and Chris Middleton, who I think are almost better passers than anyone else on this team. So he averaged 7.4 assists last season, 6.8 the year before that, 6.1 the year before that. He's had 3.6 assists over his last 5 games. He's at 4.9 for the season. He's also a guy that 2 years ago averaged 1.6 steals, and he's down at 0.6 steals in the last 5 games. So there are some very obvious indicators here from Jrue. 3-point shooting, 2-point shooting, free throw shooting, assist rate, steal rate. All of these things are going to come up. I feel really confident of that. So any top 90 player for Jrue, I think would be a pretty big W on a trade. Let's go to another point guard, but let's go to Cleveland this time and look at Darius Garland. He is 70th in -1 rankings, and this is where you get a real indication and depends on how the person who has Garland, how they are consuming their rankings, because Yahoo will tell you that over the last 2 weeks, he's ranked 130th. Again, nonsense ranking system that if you want to buy Yahoo ranking systems, you have to say the words out loud. You have to tell me you believe Delon Wright was 50 spots better than Giannis Antetokounmpo last season. If you can't say that and believe that with your chest, then you can't stand on Yahoo rankings. Sorry to tell you. 130th last season, last 2 weeks, 70th in -1 rankings, but he's better than 70th. He is better than that. He's averaging just 32 fantasy points, which puts him 70th as well. And you can look at a lot of his numbers and go, well, actually, what's wrong here? 21.7 points, great. 2.5 rebounds, he's not a good rebounder. 5.2 assists, on the surface, it looks good. 1 steal, sure, not a big steals guy. 0.2 blocks, okay. 52 from the field, we love it. 42 from 3, amazing. 83 from the line, we also really like that. But it's the little things here. This man averaged 8 assists last season, 7.8, and 8.6 the year before that. Now, Donovan Mitchell arriving is an impact. The way that Max Strus's playmaking has somewhat of an impact. But I really don't believe that Darius Garland's going to sit at under 5.5 assists when he was at 8 last season. Those 3 assists per game take you from middle pack to top, let's say, 12 in assists. It's 10 in assists. It's a big jump. Getting that is important. And again, he's hitting 83% of his free throws. A really good number. Very strong, solid positive in Z scores there. That's great. But he was 86 last season and 89 the year before that. And we talk about this a lot on this show. When a player, more when we're looking in the preseason, a guy hit 92% of his free throws, and you go, well, man, look at that. Look at that great contribution he gave in free throw percentage. And the one thing that I will say is, if you go from unbelievable, top 1%, the best there, and then transition back to very good, it's still very good. Like 91 to 86. 86 is still great from the free throw line, but it impacts your fantasy result. And it's the same here for Garland in the opposite direction. If you're an 83% free throw guy, that's still really good. It's well above average. It's a positive contribution. But it's very different from being an 87 guy. So if he gets back to 87, that Z score in that category goes from 0.1 to like 1. Big jump. That's already 10 spots in rankings. You're done. Plus the extra point that it gives you per game, then that adds on as well. You add that with an extra maybe 2 assists, and then you're back in the top 40. I don't think that Donovan Mitchell is going to get traded from this team, but I do know that there are a lot of people pissed off with Donovan Mitchell at the moment. And I do think that if we're talking dynasty especially, massive buy low for Darius Garland. In terms of where he ranks, if I could get any player outside the top 50 and trade him for Garland, I would do it. I don't care about the turnovers. I don't. He has had a history of being much better. 2.9 last season versus 4.3. Do I just think that all of a sudden he's a horrible turnover guy? No. His history would never show that he has been careless like this, and I do think this is going to improve if you care about that part. His assist to turnover ratio is dreadful, but I think one comes down and the other goes way up. I hope. That's how I'm viewing it with old mate Darius Garland. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, and I think I jinxed myself because as soon as I was giving you guys crap for the weather here, it's like rained every day. But that's fine because I've got the offers from FanDuel to keep me all warm and toasty. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if you just bet against the Detroit Pistons. Not exactly, but all you got to do is get your moneyline bet to get up and you get $150 in bonus bets. And then that's a great way to think about it if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel because, as they say in the classics, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel has parlays, over-unders, totals, sides, props, futures. It is all there over at the easy-to-use FanDuel app. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, kick off the NFL season, tip off the NBA season, and get your arms ready to lift up the NBA in-season tournament cup. FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. We are going to go through, what are we going to do? Oh, I think this is the last buy low. It is. And we are also targeting another point guard. Another one. Kyrie Irving. What's going on with Kyrie? Why are we looking at him as a buy low? Well, -1 rankings have him 52nd over the last 2 weeks, 40th on Yahoo rankings, 37.8 in fantasy points, which is 43rd. And all of that is just not indicative, I don't believe, of where Kyrie is going to sit for the rest of this season. Number one thing that I haven't even highlighted on this graphic is he's playing under 32 minutes a night over the last 5 games. He's averaging 26 points with 3 threes, 4 rebounds, 3.6 assists, red flag, 0.8 steals, no blocks, shooting 51 and 88 with 40% from 3. Now, unlike other players, the Kyrie thing is not focused on the percentages. So you could have gone to Kyrie, like I said, as a general rule, go look at the percentage and you go, well, that's fine, Josh. 51 from the field, 40 from 3, 57 from 2, 88 from the line. All checks out. It does. It's actually bang on. It's fantastic. 31 usage, that's bang on. It's probably a little bit high. But there are 2 things here that really do have an issue here with Irving. Now, I was somewhat down on Irving, for playoff schedule, but also I was a little worried about the assist rate and how that would work alongside Luka. And for the most part, it's been okay. Last season, 5.5 assists. The season before, 5.8. This season, 5.5. The last 5 games, 3.6. Big difference. We talked about the difference in Garland going from 5.5 to 8. Going from 3.5 to 5.5 is a big deal. Because 3.5 is basically average assists. 5.5 is one standard score, one standard deviation above the mean, putting you in the top or the 84th percentile for assists, basically. And he should be able to get back to that relatively easily. We don't expect him to be a big assist guy playing next to Luka, but we think we get more than 3.6. And one of Kyrie's hidden strengths has been blocks. 0.8 last season, 0.6 the season before, 0.7 the season before that. Kyrie has 4 total blocks this season. He has 0 in his last 5 games. And again, you might not think this is much, but if he can add in 2 blocks for a week, 3 blocks in some weeks, that's a big help from a point guard, and it has a big impact on his rankings. I don't think that Kyrie, we should be looking at him as a guy that we want to give up a first-round player for, obviously, or think that he's necessarily a first-round guy because of the 2-game playoff week. I do think that's going to come back. But his assist numbers are surely going to rise. His block numbers are surely going to rise. I have faith in his percentages sticking. I have faith in his minutes and his usage, all of that stuff. There's just two real things here which do have an impact on production. So if I got Kyrie for a top 35 player, given the risk associated with him, I would do it. Otherwise, if I have him, I'd just be like, I feel okay about him improving in the coming weeks. That's our 5 buy lows. So let's talk sell highs, a much harder thing to pull off than a buy low, because you've got the player, he's outperforming, and the other guys are going to be like, well, if he's so good, why are you trading him away? All right. So it is hard to do, but it is worth mentioning. So let's go with the first one. It's very obvious. It's Brook Lopez. Now, again, with these, you are not likely going to be able to do this in terms of actually pulling off that sell high. You might, but it is worth mentioning what Lopez is doing. He's 7th in -1 rankings over the last 2 weeks. If you look at Yahoo's numbers over the last 2 weeks, he's 2nd. Now, obviously, that's silly, right? But he is 2nd. 43.86 fantasy points puts him 20th. He's averaging 18.6 points, 6.4 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.1 steals, and 4 blocks. 61 from the field, 36 from 3, 94 from the line. There are so many red flags there. It's like half a life-saving event. They're all over the shop. It is so obvious that this is not going to hold. Brook Lopez took a big step forward in shot blocking last season, and we thought, that's weird. He doubled his block numbers as a 34-year-old. Wow, that's amazing. He went from 1.2 to 2.5 last season. And then he went, all right, bet, I'm going to do more. He went to 2.9 this season. And then even bigger bet, as the kids would say, he's gone to 4 blocks over the last 2 weeks. And I detailed this yesterday in the Under the Lens segment on Brook Lopez on the Daily Look Ahead. He's not even in the top 10% of players in terms of challenging shots at the rim. So he's just converting his block attempts at an insane rate. So I just don't think that has any hope of holding. Also, he's not going to average 4 blocks per game. He's also probably not going to average 2.9 blocks per game. These are coming down in a hurry. And when we go and look at Brook Lopez's fantasy profile and the numbers he's putting up, at the moment, it's basically one category that's a big positive. It's blocks. Field goal percentage is also a pretty big positive, but it is blocks carrying everything. And if they fall down, then the ranking tumbles 40, 50, 70 spots. It's also the percentages you want to look at. His 2-point numbers are at 77%, an insane number that Mitchell Robinson looks at and goes, man, I wish. There's no way Brook Lopez is a 77% shooter. For reference, he's at 65 this season, obviously boosted by the 77% over the last 2 weeks. Last season, 64. The year before that, 54. The year before that, 63. So, low 60s, definitely possible. That's 15 percentage point drop from where we're at the moment. And that 15 percentage point drop goes into your overall field goal percentage, which impacts fantasy, which impacts scoring, which brings him down to a 15-point scorer maybe. Drop the blocks down from 4 blocks to 2.4, and then you're talking about the 60th best player. There's a big fall coming. If I could get any top 40 player for Brook Lopez, I would 100% do it without any question. I don't know that you can do it, but you might. Brook Lopez, there's always someone. At some point in every week, there's always one player that the trolls will love to come at me about, to tell me, oh, you were so down on Brook, you got it wrong, you screwed everybody. So that always happens. But for that person to attack me, fine, attack me, whatever. Make sure you comment it on YouTube. YouTube definitely hates when you put algorithmic comments down the bottom. That's fine. They hate that. But when we talk about that value, if someone's coming at me and hating and saying, oh, God, that's so wrong, that means that I guess some part of their brain, and that would then translate to a larger proportion of fantasy users, that they believe that this is real, that this can hold, that this can stick, that the ranking is the be-all and end-all of the production, not how we got there, but just the overall ranking number. Not everyone believes it, but there are people who do. So that is where we target it. And again, this might happen for some people, for 5%, 10% of people. But it's more just also a PSA that, yeah, no way. This is not sticking. Let's go to New York. This man was on the buy low show in the first one we did. It is the burner, Jaylen Brunson. So he was a buy low then. And if you bought low, you got a big W. And now he's on the sell high. How is that possible? Well, players' performances change. Really obvious. He's 23rd in -1 over the last 2 weeks. He's 17th on Yahoo rankings. He's 22nd in fantasy points, averaging 43.5. All of that is great. Almost 29 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 6.7 assists, a puny 0.5 steals. So you could look at that and go, well, what if he actually gets a steal per game? Yeah, okay, that's cool. He could. 0.2 blocks. Shooting, unbelievably, 52% from the field, 52.1% from the field, 52.1% from 3, and 52.1% from 2. I've never really seen a split like that. He's also at 85% from the free throw line. So what is happening here with Jaylen Brunson? Jaylen Brunson is a good shooter. He shot 42% from three last season, which was a number I thought, that's a little bit high. He's up to 47 this season. There is going to be a stretch, like there was for the first 2 weeks of the season, where he falls back and he shoots 36% from three. Buying and selling low and buying low and selling high in fantasy is about taking advantage of things. If you were able to get Jaylen Brunson for a top 90 player early on, and now you got a guy rolling as top 25, and then you sell him and you get a top 40 player back, and then you just keep going back and forward and back and forward. It's about accumulating value. That would mean that you've turned that top 90 player into a consistent top 35 player, right? That's possible because what Brunson is doing here is not going to hold. He is not a 52% three-point shooter because literally nobody is. That is going to come down, and there's going to be a stretch where it goes at 32 or 34. He's also averaging almost 29 points. Now, last season, breakout year, 24 points. This season, 24.9. The 4 extra points per game he's averaging is because he can't miss from either 2 or from 3. It's all tied into that. That is going to fall back. You go from 52 to 33. That's 3 points off. You go back to 25 points a game. You lose 30 spots in rankings, and you're done. This is not to say that Brunson can't be a top 40 player or 50 player. He could. He can. That's possible. It's about trying to cash in the right value and then get him back if he slumps, like we've already tried at one point this season. All right, let's go to Toronto. And let's talk about Jakob Poeltl, a guy that I thought was a relatively good sleeper who was getting drafted in like the 90s or 100s. And I was like, I think this might be a 70s guy. And then Darko said, nah, we're going to split the minutes with Precious Achiuwa. And I go, guess I don't know what I'm talking about. But it's rolling in the best direction possible now. Because as Darko is leaning into Poeltl, and Poeltl is giving us good numbers. And some might say, Josh, you thought he was going to be good. So why is this a sell high? Well, I'll tell you why. He's 32nd in -1. He's 37th in Yahoo ranks. He's averaging 34 fantasy points, which is 57th. I don't think he's that good. I'm still not 100% confident in where the minutes sit. But what I do know is going to fall back. He's averaging 13 points, 9.5 rebounds, 3 assists. That's all actually relatively reasonable. 1.4 steals is definitely high, and 1.1 blocks is fine, right? He is just not going to be a 1.4 steals guy. He's at 0.9 this season, 0.9 the year before that, 0.7 the year before that, 0.7 the year before that. I just don't, and steals are variable, but they're also variable game on game, week on week, as opposed to year on year. I'm just not going to put faith on Jakob Poeltl being a 1.4 steals guy. But the big thing here is the man is hitting 82% from 2. 82%, and that he doesn't take threes, so his field goal percentage is 82%. Even if that comes back, and it will, he's at 73 for the season, but he was 63 last year, 62 the year before that, 62 the year before that. It's reasonable to suggest he comes back to 64, 65. We lose 17 percentage points. The 12.7 points comes back to 11 points, and that gigantic positive, which is the thing that is absolutely carrying all of his value, which is the field goals, goes from a Z score of 2.4 down to 1.6. You lose 25 spots right there. You lose the points back. That all comes back, and he settles back into the 60s, 70s. If I could get any top 50 player back for Jakob Poeltl, I would do it. You probably can't, but if you can, you do it. And otherwise, you just understand that there is absolutely no way. Because again, on the surface, 13 and 9 from Poeltl, which a lot of the times the people only look at the big numbers. 13 and 9 looks, that's reasonable. He's playing 29 minutes. That even might not stick. He's at 27 for the season, 27 last season. I think the 29 can stick. But people will just go, well, 13 and 9 in 29 minutes, fine, I'll take that. That is actually real. That can stick. But it's coming on shit that has no way of being able to maintain. Let's go to Chris Paul. Your time frame on selling on Chris Paul is like an hour. It's now, really. Paul is on a little bit of a hot streak. He's 38th in -1 over the last 2 weeks. He's 26th on Yahoo. He's 63rd in points, averaging 33 fantasy points. Averaging just 11 points. So you go, well, that can probably come up. Yeah, you're probably right. 4 rebounds, 8.5 assists, typical Chris Paul stuff. 1.5 steals, typical Chris Paul stuff. 0.3 blocks, shooting 46 from the field, pretty good. But he's hitting 56% from 3 and he hasn't missed a single free throw. And while he's a good free throw shooter, and while he was going to always be better from 3, he's not these numbers. He's shooting 32% from 3 this season, but last season he was at 35%. That's probably the reality, 35, 36% from 3. That is going to come back and that is going to drop his points, which are already not high. It's going to drop his three-pointers made. It's going to push all that back. But the other thing is that with Draymond Green out, he's moved up into playing almost 29 minutes a night over the last 2 weeks. Actually, he's playing 30 minutes a night. over 30, I think. 30.2. There you go. That is going to improve. His starts 36, 28, 38, 34, and then 17, which is that weird benching game, but then moved to the bench last game. But what we did see before Draymond Green's suspension was Paul playing 21, 24, 26, 26, 22 off the bench. And with Draymond running a lot of the units in terms of passing, Paul's assist numbers weren't able to stick. And Chris Paul is an assist legend, we know this. But the times that he's gotten 5 games of double-digit assists, and 3 of them have been in the last 4 games, all of them without Draymond Green. So he's got a chance of assist rate dropping, minutes dropping back by 3 a game, and a shooting drop-off coming. I'm not saying that Chris Paul's going to end up a 12-team drop, but if I could get any level of top 70 player back for Chris Paul in a trade, I would do it, but you got to act quick. He might fall back to the 90s, I think, after Draymond returns. I think that's possible. And we finish it off by looking at another old point guard, and we go to Portland to look at Malcolm Brogdon. And really, there's only one thing we're looking at here, and it's minutes. That's really it. We'll cap what he's done. Last 2 weeks, 75th in -1, 68th on Yahoo, averaging 39 fantasy points. He's come back from his hamstring injury. He's played 4 games, both of them back-to-back sets, which is insane. 30 minutes a night, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists, 43 and 79, shooting 42% from 3. But I look at those and go 42% from the field, totally reasonable. 79 from the line, actually that can improve. 42 from 3, not unreasonable that he could do close to that for the season. It's none of that stuff that's what I look at is going to change. He's also at 30% usage, which seems possibly a little high for Brogdon, who was at 23 last season. Obviously a very different scenario in Boston. He's at 29 for the season here. But the thing is, he's playing 30 minutes a night, and it's all going to come down. Eventually, I'm hoping that Scoot takes back over the starting job, but we are like 2 weeks away from Anthony Simons returning, which is definitely going to reduce Brogdon's numbers. So this is the perfect situation of copping a short-term hit. I think Brogdon might end up droppable. He might not, but he might. But we have seen one game where Simons played. That is it. And Brogdon was able to ramp up in that time frame. And there's the injury risk, and there's risk of him being traded. Flying at the moment, putting up big numbers. If you gave me any top 100 player for Brogdon, I would take it. Understanding that for the next week or 2, I lose that trade. And that's a mindset you've got to be willing to take. Is that Brogdon, and we might come back to this in the buy low, sell high recap in 2 weeks' time, and Brogdon's numbers have stayed similar. That is distinctly possible. And then the Simons hammer drops. And then Scoot's back in, and then we're rolling, and Brogdon's playing 24 a night and doing none of this stuff. Sometimes you've got to get ahead on the action, because if you do it the game where Simons has been upgraded to questionable, people go, why would I take Brogdon now? Simons is back. You've got to take a short-term hit to understand that in January, you're going to be getting a big, big advantage out of it. That is how I would be approaching a Malcolm Brogdon situation. And that is the end of a buy low, sell high show, which honestly is only sort of buy low, sell high. It's more just, hey, what are recent trends? What's bullshit? What's real? What's going to improve? What's not? If you've got a bunch of names on the buy low show, that doesn't mean your team is bad. What that does mean is that you're probably going to have a better run moving forward. Is things are going to look up. If you've got a bunch of guys on the sell high team, be careful. It might be a rough period coming up. That's how this works. I think that's almost more important than trying to pull off these swindle trades, which are very, very hard to do. Follow this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and on Odyssey. And if you're on YouTube, you know what to do. Please, you thumb it up. Drop your comments down below. Who are some other buy lows and sell highs that you have? Put them in the comments, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.